Hello, I am very happy to be sat here this week looking at the wonderful Zara, who is an amazing inspiration to many of us in the doula world. Hello, Zara.
Hello, Sally Ann. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us all about what you do?
Yes, thank you so much. So, yeah, my name's Zara, and I have been a doula for 11 years. I'm a birth and postnatal doula. I work mainly in Surrey now, in Godalming, where I live. And along the way, I've also picked up some other skills that kind of feed really nicely into the doula work. So I am an association of breastfeeding mothers breastfeeding counsellor. I am a breastfeeding counsellor for Maddie's Miracle, which is an amazing charity set up by Maddie McMahon, founder of Developing Doulas. I also joined the Developing Doulas teaching team in 2015. I'm also co-chair of my local Maternity Voices partnership, and that is an amazing privilege. I work with a hospital, the Royal Surrey, and their maternity unit is so forward thinking, and the relationship that Polly, my co-chair, and I have with the team is brilliant, and actually we can really affect change. So essentially what we're doing is working with our team of volunteers to listen to people's experiences of using the service, and that might be excellent, and we feed all that back because that's really important, but also the not so great experiences where things could be different. So all of these things, and there's so many other little things. I do 3-step rewind. So I think you can come to doulaing, and there is just an enormous wealth of courses and classes and learning that you can take on to kind of add to your strings to your bow, if you like.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Now, I want to focus today on postnatal care, and you did mention that you were both a birth and postnatal doula. So not only do you get to witness those first moments, you also have the wonderful job of helping the new family to transition. So you see the best of both worlds. You see the birth, and in many cases, you'll carry on and support families in those first days, weeks, and months of their baby's life. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so postnatal doulaing is probably what I do most of now. I work almost full time, so most days I am supporting new families. It can be a few hours to a whole day, and it is such a critical time, Sally Ann. I mean, we talk about the first 1,001 days, don't we, from pregnancy through to when the baby is 2, and actually a good sort of foundation, getting that 4th trimester or the first 3 months after birth right, can have such an enormous impact on the relationship in the future. So what is so important is to actually begin to think about what the postpartum period is going to look like, and ideally do that during pregnancy, when you'll have more time and more headspace, hopefully, to sit down and actually think about it. And I in conjunction with a wonderful designer who's also a hypnobirthing teacher, Emma at Nama Mama, created a postpartum intentions planner, and it's the most beautiful 20-page booklet, and it walks parents to be through all sorts of things that they might want to consider about what their 4th trimester is going to look like. And it's available as a PDF. It's also available as a journal that they can write in. Obviously, they can print off the PDF, but the planner is just really nice quality paper. It feels like a nice thing to have. So when I work with clients, I send them this planner, and if there's a partner there, I suggest that, in the same way that I would talk about birth planning, to sit down and put some thought and intention into, I mean, there are so many things to think about, but who is going to look after that new mother, that new parent, while she bonds with her baby? We know the important thing is that that new mother has space and time to recover from birth, however that might have unfolded, but also to create the space to bond and connect with that baby. And whether that's as a breastfeeding mother or somebody who's choosing to combination feed or formula feed, we need to create space for that relationship to bond and to grow. And it's really interesting to explore that with the mother and the partner, because so often the partner thinks, well, the only way I'm going to be able to bond with my baby is to feed them a bottle.
Yeah.
And you know, I think absolutely, if that feels right, and you sort of have an understanding of how breastfeeding works, if that is how the new mother wants to feed, then we can sort of create a plan. But actually, there are many ways for a new partner or father to bond with the baby. And that can be doing everything else for that baby. So taking baby to mum to feed, taking the baby afterwards to win that baby, to change the baby's nappy, having glorious skin to skin time while mummy's having a nap, having a bath with that baby, just, you know, spending time with that baby, because that connection is so precious. And that's, you know, quite possibly the greatest gift that a partner or father can offer their new baby, is that time, that, you know, time to just sit and look at one another, that time to have skin to skin, where we know that it regulates a baby's temperature, its heart rate, that baby is in its safest, most relaxed state when skin to skin. And of course, you know, in the very early days and weeks, ideally we want that to be with the mother, to facilitate breastfeeding and healing and recovery. So I think, you know, we want to encourage partners to consider different ways they can bond, but also who's going to feed that mother, who is going to do the housework, who's going to take care of other children, pets. There are so many things to think about, and I see that very often those things aren't given the due consideration, and suddenly, you know, I'll get a call saying my wife had a baby, or I had a baby 2 weeks ago, I'm absolutely sleep deprived, pulling my hair out here, do you have any time? So we want to kind of avoid that, and by putting thought into it in advance, it can make a huge difference. Even if it's, you know, if you're able to afford having a cleaner coming once every couple of months, a couple of weeks to you know, take care of things. And you know, it also depends on the personality, doesn't it, of that new mother. Some are really clear that they like things a certain way, and if the house isn't kind of shipshape and orderly, they're going to find it really hard to take that time to just rest. You know, we talk about a week in bed, a week on the bed, a week on the sofa, and in an ideal world, you know, that's how that new mother would sort of pace those early weeks, just focusing in on her recovery, resting as much as she can, you know, bringing some maybe some yoga or some nice stretching in, just to allow her body to kind of feel like it's moving, but essentially tuning in to what she needs, and not having to get out there back into the real world too quickly, because that real world is not going anywhere, is it? And having visitors come in too soon can really disrupt that flow. I remember speaking to a lady who called, and she was really upset, and this was a couple of years ago, and she called from her bedroom. She said, I'm trying to breastfeed my baby. My baby's 5 days old, and downstairs in my sitting room, there are about 10 members of my extended family. And they're all just sitting around, drinking tea, chatting. And I'm trying to get to grips with breastfeeding. I have big breasts, so I feel quite conscious of getting them out in front of all these cousins and brothers-in-laws, and I have had to escape up to my bedroom because my baby was just being passed around, and it doesn't feel like that's quite right. And we had a great conversation, and I kind of talked her through some things, and we got her comfortable on her bed, and she got her baby to the breast, and the baby had a really good feed. But I think it's worth considering, these people can meet your baby, but actually in those first couple of weeks, if you can really limit those visitors and have visitors that are going to add benefit. So not the visitor that's going to come and sit and want a cup of tea made, but those that will bring a meal, that will whip the Hoover around, that won't necessarily take the baby from you, because we know that that's not always helpful, but will do other things so that that new parent can sit with the baby and be bought a drink and something nourishing to eat. So I think it's just kind of reimagining things and looking to other cultures where they do get it right, where they honor the first 40 days, that kind of 6 weeks where so much change is happening for that baby and for that mother, and allowing that transition to happen sort of privately, so that the immediate members of the family can work out what their new role is and the dynamics between everybody. And after 40 days, we think that the mother will hopefully have established breastfeeding, if that's how she's going to feed. Her bleeding will have slowed down. The baby will have come out of that very early newborn phase and starting to kind of engage and smile. So it sort of makes sense that that particular period of time is really protected.
It's really interesting, isn't it, how different it's been for families during this last year? Because I run an online coffee morning, and so many of the mums have sort of said how they've been upset that their maternity leave was,
Yeah.
ruined by COVID, and yet they can all see the benefits have been huge because they've not had to have any visitors traipsing through the house, and they haven't had to get dressed, and they haven't had to make the effort, and therefore haven't had to feel bad about not making the effort.
Yes.
And in turn, the relationship with their babies is much stronger because their expectations were minuscule.
Yeah.
But I do wonder how much conversation in the antenatal period actually sinks in. Like when you're talking about the fourth trimester in pregnancy, what do you think they take on board? Because it is an exhausting period of time, yet fascinating, isn't it? The fourth trimester, and they look at you in awe or certainly when I'm talking about it in pregnancy, they're like, oh, wow, and the baby gets to stay on you and it's so adorable. And yet when they're in the reality of that, it's not always easy. So tell me what your thoughts are on preparation in pregnancy. How much do they take in?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think, that there's a lot of truth in people being so fixated on the birth day or days that it's really quite difficult to see beyond that. So, with postpartum planning sessions, and a lot of doulas are beginning to offer these, I tend to offer them right at the end of pregnancy, so sort of 36 weeks or thereabouts, and that feels like quite a good time for them to begin to think about it, and begin to put some thoughts down on paper. I think the great thing with having a postpartum planner is you can plot things and write it down and then go back to it. It's also I think really useful, and something that I know I do and other doulas do, is when you book clients into these post-planning sessions, to then have check-ins once the baby is earthside. And I tend to do that, I mean, either it's once a week or every couple of weeks, and we'd have an hour session, and we just kind of go through anything that has come up for them that week. And I think within the postpartum planning, it's kind of gently managing expectations for what things are going to look like. Infant sleep, what breastfeeding looks like. And actually, you know, whilst for some women they can put their baby to the breast and off they go, for others it is a very, very challenging time. And, you know, I kind of talk to partners about, if a woman is well supported to breastfeed, and we know that support coming from their partner, from their nearest and dearest, is crucial in that being successful. But if that partner can support that woman through challenges, even when it looks really difficult, when that mother is in tears in the middle of the night because the baby's unsettled, to support that new mother through cluster feeding, which, you know, can typically happen in the kind of late afternoon into the wee hours when a baby just seems to be saying, I'm not getting enough milk from you. If we can educate them to understand what normal breastfeeding looks like, that, you know, that is the kind of support that can be so valuable. Because, you know, it's so easy to say, oh look, we'll just give them a bottle, then I can take the baby and you can sleep. And if that mum wants to breastfeed, is that helpful? No, it's not. So I think education is so important. The ABM do a brilliant partner supporter module, and it just goes through, it's, you know, it's short and sweet, but it kind of covers the key points. And I think just drip feeding little bits of information. So, you know, get them to complete the postpartum planner, talk through all the usual things that are going to come up, as I've said, you know, infant sleep, you know, where a baby's going to sleep, how they're going to feed, you know, can the introduction of dummies and bottles interfere with breastfeeding, you know, and all these kind of really important topics. So we'll kind of get them to consider those, and then send some links, send little bits of reading that they can you know, hopefully make some sense of before the baby arrives, and then to continue that conversation once the baby's here. So that might be going in as a postnatal doula, it might be doing, you know, having those conversations remotely. But I think what feels so useful is if they know that they can reach out to you in you know, kind of that moment of, is this normal? Because of course, you know, we know when it's a first baby, we have no idea what's normal, really. Even though we, you know, even those that really tune into their instincts, it can be a confusing time. So, you know, doulas just offer so much value. And, you know, because of the pandemic, you know, one of the silver linings really is that there are so many doulas offering virtual remote support and packages and care. And it might be a one-off, or it might be, as I say, a series of kind of conversations. But luckily, because doulas are part of the social care system, we can go in and support clients in their home. We have to take the precautions, you know, PPE, washing our hands, making sure that, you know, there's communication, you know, if the client is feeling unwell, we have to kind of have a conversation if we're feeling unwell. So there's got to be lots of transparency, lots of honesty. But I've been supporting clients at home, and all has been well so far.
There's a couple of things that have sprung to mind while you were talking. The first one, as we're on the thread of doulas, postnatal doulas particularly, I think it's so important for people to understand why they should invest in themselves, because I've had clients who've said to me, oh, I haven't told anyone that I've hired a doula because they'll just think I'm a bit of a princess. And, you know, why do I need support when everyone else has managed without? Now, one of the things I notice about areas where there are really successful postnatal doulas is because people aren't afraid to talk about it. They're telling their friends, this is something you should do because look at the difference. Look at how much of a difference it makes to the journey. Why would you want to come out the other side of your, you know, first few months of parenthood so wiped out and exhausted that you didn't enjoy any of it? And actually, you
Yeah.
didn't really even bond well with your baby, and you ended up arguing with each other because there was just too much on your plate. And so that was the first thing that I thought, was that, you know, anyone listening needs to consider the idea of looking for support in their area that they can access in those early weeks, and have that list to hand. If they don't want to make the commitment in pregnancy, which of course we would always recommend they do, if
Yeah.
they don't want to make that commitment in pregnancy, at least they've got access to numbers and support, even, you know, breastfeeding support, all of the numbers that they need, and doula support, because that is essential to be able to find it quickly. And then the other thing I was thinking about while you were talking was the rescue image of the partner or potentially other members of the family coming along and saying to a person who's trying to breastfeed and establish breastfeeding, or is a few weeks down the line and maybe experiencing issues, rather than accessing that support, they go, well, just give it a bottle, just stop. And
Mm.
actually, my experience is that women struggle with that for life. If they actually stopped breastfeeding before they were ready because another person tried to rescue them and help them out of that difficult spot, that difficult period of time, they have huge regrets. It needs to come from that person. It needs to come from the breastfeeding woman. It needs to come from a place where she feels utterly like she's tried absolutely everything she could, and then she's ready to move on. Because for me, that, you know, that's really important for anyone listening to this podcast to take away, is that it isn't your place to step in and rescue.
Oh, Sally Ann, you're absolutely right. It's absolutely key, isn't it? You know, as doulas, particularly, we don't advise. We walk alongside our clients, don't we? Side to side, shoulder to shoulder, as an informed friend, and we hopefully will be giving them information that enables them to make an informed decision. But actually, sometimes it's difficult to make an informed decision when you're coming from this very emotional place. We have to support clients to that end, to make decisions that might not be rational, that might not follow the best evidence. We have to sort of make sure that they feel heard. And you're absolutely right. When we know that when a breastfeeding journey comes to a close prematurely, and not because that woman has chosen it to, it can result in real trauma. And actually, Amy Brown has written a brilliant book that nods to that. It's a real thing. It really is. And we know that there is so much emphasis on breastfeeding being normal, it being the way that obviously humans have are fed. But nowadays there is so much choice and so much influence from formula companies who have this huge budget to sell it and promote it. And so actually the breastfeeding message, whilst it's loud, it's being so diluted in society. And I think people don't truly realize that formula is not equal. And absolutely every new parent has the right to make that choice and to feed the baby the way they choose to feed their baby. But having some information just feels like a good place to start from in making that decision. So a doula can help to educate the family, can't they? I mean, again, I'm going back to the ABM. They have amazing leaflets for grandparents that you can access. And, you know, a grandparent might come with best intentions, you know, seeing her daughter or her, you know, being stressed and unhappy, and you know, well, you were raised on formula, you're all right, let me give the baby a bottle. And it's coming from a good place. But as you've kind of suggested, if that choice is taken away without that mother really wanting to do it, it can lead to lots and lots of issues down the line. So educating everybody in that person's bubble is really valuable.
Very much so. I talk about this myself when I'm teaching pregnant couples about how to make sure you send information to your relatives about the fourth trimester, because there's nothing worse than someone who's told they're spoiling their baby because they're holding them too much. And, you know, one of the things I think has come along in the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, possibly longer, I'm not sure, but the idea that actually we understand so much more about the needs of a newborn, and we recognize the importance of skin to skin, but our mothers and grandmothers they don't know that. And it is important to send them links to articles and say, you know, this is why I'm going to be spending a lot of time wearing a sling, you know, this is why I'm going to be carrying my baby a lot in those early weeks and months, you know, those first few months, which is so vital. And I say to the mums who come to baby massage when I was teaching in person, what's really interesting is if you look around the room, the mums with the 6-week-olds, they're holding their babies, unable to put them down very much. But the mums with the sort of 10, 12-week-olds, they're lying on the floor kicking their legs. And the mums beyond that are holding toys and, you know, doing things. It does end. It isn't forever. It isn't that you're in a situation where you are going to be holding your child for the rest of your days. It's exhausting, and for some mums they can feel very touched out. And that's an issue I think that needs to be discussed antenatally as well, to be able to communicate to your partner when you're in the postnatal period, do you know what, I want to make dinner, you have the baby. I'm not, you know, I'm not saying that I don't want to be with my baby. I just have had enough today. Give me an hour to myself, you know, I'll do the other stuff. And it's really interesting how many women can't communicate that. They just don't have the words. And to be able to say, I'm going for a walk around the block, leave me alone. And also physical touch from their partner is something that, again, I really want to cover in the pregnancy, because I think that so many women feel that touched out that when their partner comes home, they're worried that if they give them affection, that will lead to the partner wanting to have sex with them. And so they just step back and avoid touch altogether, which can build a big bridge between them. So there's so much about stuff in pregnancy that I think is worth covering, that will make a massive difference in those early days, weeks and months when you are both exhausted, beyond exhausted. You know, you don't know tiredness until you're, you know, living with a newborn, do you really?
No, that's absolutely right. And you know, again, those are the things to be considering in your postpartum planning journal. You know, what do each of those people in the relationship need when they're very exhausted? How do they respond to being tired? What lifts their spirits? What little things can be kind of incorporated into the week that give both of them something that enables them to kind of come together, and, you know, rather than, as you say, separate. And you know, as I've already said, you know, that particularly that first 3 months, but not just that first 3 months, the transitions are humongous as they work out what kind of mother I am, what kind of, you know, father or co-parent am I, how do I you know, wish to kind of raise our baby, and that, you know, they might have ideas that then really change. Because I've had plenty of clients that said, no, I'm not going to have my baby sleeping with me, we're going to, you know, very clearly have and actually those things morph and change as the baby is earthside. And for many new parents, that bond, that deep love and connection grows slowly. You know, we talk about that immediate kind of rush of oxytocin, but that doesn't happen to everybody. And it kind of makes sense that you're all kind of working out who you are. You know, this baby that you've been growing, but actually now they, you know, here they are. Who are they? And, you know, so it's that there's so much investment in that time, and if it can be done slowly and gently, then all the better. But I also recognize that, you know, I've had clients who've said, I cannot stay in bed for a week, that is not my nature, I'm just, you know, if I feel that I'm going to be trapped in my bed and I can't sort of get out there and, you know, back in the day, see friends or family, that's going to be difficult for me. So, you know, we accept that actually every postpartum plan is going to look really different. And yes, of course, you know, go out, have you know, go in the garden, have a 10-minute stroll, but just be mindful that you have been through this enormous physical experience, and you'll get tired quickly. And actually, you know, the body's very clever. If you start doing too much, your postpartum bleeding will get heavier. So build in times to put your feet up and nap. And you know, a lot of new parents say, God, everyone's saying sleep when your baby sleeps, but actually I'm thinking, well, I should be doing this job, that job. So, you know, we have to recognize that, you know, we're all so different, aren't we? There's not going to be this one size fits all, but to find the space to recharge in ways that work for the individual.
Absolutely. I think that that's the most important thing about communication, isn't it? And that's why the communication in pregnancy and then in the early days is so important. I think, you know, the last year has taught a lot of us how to switch off that we
Yes.
didn't have before.
Yeah.
A lot of us can actually put our feet up and not feel guilty about it anymore, or certainly for a period of time, you know, where they may not have been able to do that before. So let's keep our fingers crossed that something good has come out of the last year with regards to that. But you know, I just think that there's so much for anyone having a baby to consider about the postnatal period and how it moves forward. And I also think it's important for people having subsequent babies. So I teach a course for couples having a second or subsequent, and I make it really clear that there's a couple of things that they want to know. And the first one is that it's very typical that the other parent tends to take care of the older child, and the new baby is with the mum because they typically are the ones doing the feeding, and the relationship with the other parent doesn't always develop with the baby because they never get their hands on the baby at all, because they're always dealing with the older one. So anyone listening, I would really encourage you, if you're in this situation, you're having your second, third, fourth baby, take the baby, get some time with the baby, and don't just assume that the mum wants to have the baby and that she wants you to have the older children. She actually probably is grieving a little bit from the relationship she's missing out on with the older child, and would probably appreciate you saying, do you know what? I'll have the baby. Why don't you go and do bath time? Or why don't you do story time? Because actually, you know, that relationship has been her probably, you know, quite important to her until the point where the second or third child came along. So recognizing other elements of that is important.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Sally Ann. That's so true. I've just finished a lovely postnatal job with a family where actually I went in to do the kind of, you know, the bath bedtime slot, because the mum was so aware that her older child needed that continuity, and she was really aware that she didn't want that relationship to be damaged, and that is one of the key themes that come up. And actually, very often, postnatal doulas go into families where there are, more than one child. And whilst we're not nannies, a lot of what we're doing is sort of supporting the new parents to spend time with the older child, because of course a baby, if you're holding a baby with love and care, that that doula can offer that support to that baby. Actually, it's the older child that's trying to work out, wow, what's just happened to my world? Am I going to lose the attention and affection of my parents? How can I kind of make sure that they still see me? And often you'll see behaviour patterns changing and regressions and things. So that's a really good point, that either that conversation is had with the partner, if there is one, to facilitate kind of one-on-one time, or you have a doula or somebody else coming in to kind of help with that as well.
Amazing. I always like to end these sessions by saying, what top tip can you give to any birth partner? And of course, yours can be about birth or postnatal. Take your pick, or all of that if you want to. What would you share?
My top tip. Okay, well let me go with postnatal is really for just to really instill to the partner that in those early days, weeks and months, to be so kind and gentle with that new mother, because we know that maternal mental health, mental health full stop, is really has been really compromised, hasn't it, through the pandemic. But we know 1 in 10 women will suffer with anxiety and postpartum depression. We know also that new fathers will too. But to just be generous and kind, and acknowledge that there are probably going to be tears. There are going to be the baby blue tears in that first week, but there are going to be moments of kind of overwhelm and feeling like they're not doing a good job and they can't cope, and to just hold that new mum's space, to give her time. And also, as you've touched on, to not expect them to want to jump back into bed for cuddles and sex, and to be gentle in every respect, and to just nurture her and love her, because it's such an enormous thing she's gone through, giving birth and then raising her newborn.
I think when I'm teaching, a lot of men are concerned about the mental health of their partner. They've heard about postnatal depression and they're quite scared, because it almost seems like a bit of a lottery. Like, is she, isn't she, is she, isn't she? Like, are we going to suffer, aren't we? And the things that I always talk about are how important nutrition is. Making sure that she's fed well, not just fed, but fed well. Because if you consider the average partner, typically pre-COVID, hopefully post-COVID, will be, what I mean is things will go back to normal. They will be leaving her on her own in the home from about 2 weeks on average after the birth. And if there's no food in the house, typically she'll resort to eating crap, because that's all there is. And she doesn't have the energy or the capacity to stand up and make a full-blown nutritious meal. It's time consuming, it's exhausting, and the baby's probably needing her. So I would say, to sort of add to that, is look at some decent food and make sure every time you leave the house, you leave her with a nutritious meal or snack. Another beauty of a postnatal doula, obviously, is that's something that they would support you with. But just making sure, because the two things that really affect mental health is bad diet and lack of sleep. Well, you can't change the lack of sleep.
Yes.
That's going to be the case, isn't it? So yeah, just making sure that they produce good quality food rather than just leaving her to kind of, the amount of women that will come to coffee morning and say, oh, can I have an extra biscuit because that's my breakfast?
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that's, you know, another thing that a lot of pregnant people will do is start to kind of batch cook for the freezer, but also, you know, when you're thinking about the gifts that people give you, getting a voucher for cook, getting some friends to club together for a few postnatal doula hours, because yeah, the value of warming foods and good nutrition in those early days is critical. And I would say to clients that, you know, if they're going to work, to leave, as you've said, something that she can just grab out of the fridge, so that she's not surviving on chocolate and crisps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really, really important, isn't it?
Yeah, because that can be delicious, but it can really affect their mental health. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also, you know, blood sugar is kind of going up and down if you're kind of eating junk and you know, things that kind of get you a little bit jittery, and then you have the slump, which you're going to be kind of experiencing anyway with a newborn baby. So yeah, nutrition is absolutely critical, and you know, many postnatal doulas will do an awful lot of cooking.
Absolutely. One thing I think we haven't touched on that much of is sling wearing, because I think that is something a lot of parents to be don't realize can literally save their lives.
Yeah.
Have you got anything to share about wearing a sling and what kind of sling you would recommend?
Yeah, so yeah, baby wearing is the biggest hack, isn't it? I think as a doula, I ask all my clients whether they're happy for me to wear their babies. Um, you know, if they're getting some rest, or you know, having a little pocket of time for themselves during our session. I honestly wouldn't be able to recommend a particular kind of sling, because there are so many on the market, and it's like a pair of jeans. It depends on all sorts of things what's going to be the right style for you. I tend to just wear a stretchy wrap, which is a great long piece of fabric, and that's really nice, I think, in the very early days when you want to pull the baby in really snugly. But I would seek out a sling consultant. You know, they're dotted all around the country, and they will do kind of online consultations that are pretty good value. And when we can sort of get back out there, many areas have what are known as a sling library. So in the same way that you borrow books, you can go in, they're run by sling consultants, so they'll kind of let you try some on, and then you hire them. And that can be a good way to sort of work out which one you like, and then you can invest in one if you want to. But you know, baby wearing means baby gets what they need because they're in close contact to a parent or somebody, a nice warm body, and they have the movement which they like, and you know, we've talked about kind of regulating temperature and heart rate, and you have hands free. So it means that you know, if they're on their own, they can make themselves a sandwich or a cup of tea. They can potter about, and it just keeps everyone happy and close. And also, when you're wearing your baby, it's easy to see when they're wanting a feed. It's also easy to see and be able to pick up on kind of cues that they're tired. So you know, having a baby close in those early days is, yeah, everyone benefits. And then, as you've said, you know, kind of 6 or 7 weeks, you might be putting them under their baby gym for 5 minutes, and so that period of intense connection does begin to sort of soften around the edges a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's also worth, you know, acknowledging that they have these growth spurts and developmental leaps that come along, and during those phases often you will find a baby wants to be very close again because everything in their world is changing.
Absolutely. I'm like you. I wear stretchy wraps and wouldn't be without them. And so highly recommend them, purely because, as you said, you can honestly feel like your hands are free. A lot of slings, you might feel that you need to keep the baby secure and hold one hand or another on the baby as you're moving around. So if you were leaning over to empty the washing machine, for example, you might feel like you can't do that. Whereas in a really well fitted wrap sling, you have two hands that are completely free. So it's wonderful. So
Yeah. What I would say on that though is, you know, very often if you see us, I mean, all baby wearing, you should be able to do that. So I think very often people wear baby carriers and they're just not fitted properly.
right, okay.
So you know, we should be able to kind of have hands free and really comfortably know our baby is secured there. So I think that's why seeing somebody that can, you know, who's really expert in baby wearing is of great value.
Thank you, Zara. Oh, it's been absolutely wonderful. I've had such a lovely time talking to you, and
You
all of
too.
your wise wisdom. So thank you for sharing it with us.
My absolute
Where can
pleasure.
people find you?
So I am Doula Bud, www.doulabud.co.uk, and I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook, and you know, happy to answer any questions, send out copies of my postpartum planner. Yeah, I'm just, you know, love talking doula. So any questions about breastfeeding, doulaing, I'm here.
And you do your fourth trimester planning sessions.
I offer my fourth trimester planning sessions, and actually I'm about to set up a little shop on my Instagram page, and you'll be able to buy the PDF or order a you know, a hard copy. They're £5 each, and all the money is going to charities, and I change the charities every few months.
Oh, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.